Basketball fan, you know that usually around this time of year, NBA players are getting ready for the upcoming season. But it's not quite the case this year, as the entire league has been in a lockout since late June, early July, and the threat of a season cancellation lingers. But what exactly is the legal definition of a lockout? Here to answer this question and give us a better understanding is attorney and legal correspondent David Lesch. Welcome.
Hi, Sylvia. Nice to see you again.
Nice to be here.
Are you a basketball fan or a football fan? Or?
I'm a basketball fan.
Basketball fan. Well, these are interesting times for many sports organizations. As you know, we keep hearing the term lockout. We hear the term collective bargaining. Last night we did a show on Today's Verdict, and we had two very interesting guests. We had labor lawyer, his name was Robert Brody, who talked a little bit about the law, and then we had Bobby C. to talk about the sports. Put them together, and what I'm really going to do today is rehash a little bit about what it means to have a lockout. Now, what a lockout is, it gives the owners leverage to negotiate with players once a collective bargaining agreement has expired. This means that you have the NFL or the NBA on one side, the owners, and on the other side you have the players. During the course of negotiations, an agreement will eventually come to an end. Until that happens, you can't have a lockout. Right? Of course, the players can always strike, but you can't have you can't have the strike until the agreement is actually over. But once that agreement has expired, the owners can say, look, don't come to work anymore. We're not going to pay you, and that's it. We're not going to give you your benefits. We're not going to give you pension. We're not going to give you everything. We're locking you out. That forces labor to then decide, well, what are we going to do now? Whether it's the basketball players or it could be an electrical union. It could be anybody. Mm-hmm. How are we going to handle this? In terms of professional sports, what you're dealing with are millionaires up against multimillionaires, and that's the owners. So the question is, how are they going to split up the revenue that comes in? The lockout forces the owners at this point to say, hey, you only have a certain amount of years to be able to make the kind of money you're making. Professional basketball player, what, 5, 6 years? Football player, 2, 3 years. So we're going to lock you out and not let you play unless you decide to lower your standards in terms of how much you're expecting to make based on the league. We may want to put in salary caps. We may want to have rookies who come in who can only make a certain amount of money. These are all things that are going to impact how much money you're going to make, but we have to do this because there are certain teams that are not making money. Yes, New York's making money, Los Angeles is making money, but some of the small market teams are not. And if you don't make certain concessions, we can't function together as a league. Therefore, we are going to lock you out. Now, you and I talked a little bit earlier before we got on set that, Ron Artest, there's also a player from the New Jersey Nets who is going overseas to play. Now, some might say that's really breaking the union, because here they are not getting paid by the NBA, but they are going overseas and they're getting paid. So are they really collectively working together as a union? Probably not. But the big issue here is, what's the next step for the players? The players can do one of two things. There's labor law, which allows you to always continue bargaining, collective bargaining with the owners. And then there's something that's called antitrust litigation. What that means is you decertify your union, because you're not allowed to bring an action as a union under the antitrust laws. You have to decertify your union, and you have to individually bring the action, or at least bring it in terms of a class action. But you can't bring the action as a union. Now that has some some advantages and disadvantages for a union to do that. If they decertify, they can go into court, they go in individually, and they say, look, I'm being restrained in terms of my ability to make a living. When there are salary caps and that types of things that the owners are doing, I can't make as much money. You're restraining my trade. There are antitrust violations here, Your Honor, and I want to get money for that. And in the past, players have gotten money individually. The problem is it takes years, and lately many of these unions that have come in that have decertified haven't done as well as if they stayed together as a union and they've negotiated in good faith with the owners. So we're not quite sure where this is heading with the NBA. With the NFL, they finally just settled their negotiations. They ended up into a deal. Some people think the deal is fair. I think the sacrificial lamb in the NFL were the rookies who are coming in from college.
I was going to say that because a lot of them, their potential earning like people who came in as rookies 2-3 years ago are sometimes, in some cases, making almost double what they're making entering, and I think it's unfair.
It's not sometimes, they are making double. And the unfair thing is, you had 2 years ago somebody coming in as a rookie is making, let's say they were coming in as making $10 million. Now this year, the rookie's just as good, if not better. It can only make $5 million. But then again, so the league is looking for ways to cut salaries. And some people say, and the sacrificial lamb were the rookies who really don't have a negotiating standpoint because they're still in college. So who is negotiating for them? It's the players who are in there already who are saying, hey, don't cut my salary, don't have the salary cap affect me, but the rookies are okay because they haven't made their money yet and they're going to be able to make their money. But that's the way it always is. You know, if you don't have a strong negotiating standpoint, you're going to get thrown to the wolves, and that's what happened. All right. Decertification. In most industries, you will never decertify your union. You want your union, you want to stand together, you want to strike, you want to picket, you want to go up against management, you want to say, fine, you want to lock us out, then who are you going to get? Some replacement people? There's nobody as good as we are. We're the engineering union or we're the electrical union. You need us. So most industries never have decertification of a union.
Okay.
And it's the employers who try and decertify them, who try and break them up because they have a better negotiating stance if it's individually instead of going after a union as a whole. The professional sports teams or organizations really are the anomaly. You're having a situation where they're actually decertifying themselves. The union is actually saying, we're going to break this up. We're going to break ourselves up and go in and sue individually. The owners say, hey, wait a second, this is a sham. You're not really breaking yourselves up. Yes, you're going in individually under under Brett Favre as a class action or Tom Brady as a class action, but you're still going in as a union. You're really still negotiating together as a union, so let's call it what it is. Now, if a judge says to the union or to the decertified union, you're really still acting together as a union, you can't come into our province. You can't come into the court and sue under antitrust litigation by doing this. Then the union has a problem.
Okay.
So we don't really know where this is going because it's such a fine line as to decertification and not decertifying. So I'm not quite sure where this is going to go. But when I asked Bobby last night, Bobby C, during the television show, is there going to be an NBA season, yes or no? And he said yes, but only half. And that seems to be the feelings. I think we're going to lose half the season before the owners and the players finally get on the same page and figure out how to break up this $5 to $10 billion pie, which is the NBA. And
but
you
what
figure they'd be able
happens with the players that are going abroad that have already? I hope there's no contracts that are signed because that would be.
Well, the deal that they've made is that once the agreement is made between the NBA and the players' union, then they can leave wherever they are, whether they're playing in England or they're playing for Croatia or wherever they're playing, they can leave. So the contracts that they sign overseas can be terminated the moment that the agreement is signed between the NBA and the players' union. So which is very, very smart. So from the players' perspective, like, okay, don't pay me NBA, I'll go overseas and I'll make money there. That actually can put some pressure on the players, on the owners, because the owners are saying, hey, wait a second, it's not like these guys really need a job.
So when do you think a decision will be reached?
Well,
what's next?
First they decertify, then they go into court and they possibly bring in antitrust action. But during this time, there's going to be negotiations that are going on behind the scenes. David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA, wants to keep salaries down. That's his legacy. That's how he wants to leave the NBA as a commissioner. He built this huge organization, money's being made, but he thinks it's gotten out of hand, and he thinks the players are just demanding too much, and he doesn't want to leave that as a legacy.
Wow, we're out of time today. David, it was definitely a lot of information, and it's interesting that basketball and football were having the same issues at the same time. So I look to hear more. Hopefully when it's resolved, you can come back and we can talk about it.
Thanks, Sylvia. It was nice.